many large organizations across different verticals representing life sciences, healthcare, industrials. And Daniel, in his role, helps these organizations really architect their cybersecurity strategy, integrating data security best practices within their products and services. So thank you, Daniel and Victor, both of you, for joining us. So before we kick off our program, Daniel and Victor, do you want to say a quick hi to our audience?
Sure. Good morning, everyone. Super happy to be here with you today. Obviously, a very topical discussion. Happy to share what we're seeing in the market, what we've seen work well with our clients, and where we've seen challenges. But really looking forward to the discussion and happy to answer any questions. So please feel free to add those to the chat. And I appreciate Vic joining me here today.
Yes. Good morning, everyone. Pleasure to be here today and speaking about what's been on, I'm sure, all of our minds over the last few months.
Thank you both. So the way we are going to manage the program, I'm going to take the next 2 to 3 minutes to really set up a framework for the conversation. And then I'll invite Victor and Daniel to join me back for an engaging conversation on a variety of topics. So just to quickly get started, right? AI has been a part of our daily life for years now, right? We kind of often forget how we consume AI. Think about all the recommendations that you're getting when you're watching Netflix or shopping ideas when you're browsing through Amazon. AI has been a part of our daily life. And suddenly we have seen the kind of disruptive technology around Gen AI come in, which is even more kind of engaging and valuable. And it wouldn't be wrong to argue that even Gen AI is becoming a part of our daily life. I, for say, as a product marketer, regularly use Gen AI to research on complex topics, and I believe so do you and many of your colleagues. And for those reasons, analysts in many organizations are predicting the tremendous value add, how this technology could be adding trillions of economic value to many of our companies. But at the same time, there are aspects of Gen AI that make it slightly unique. Unlike the traditional AI techniques that have relied on analyzing structured data to make predictions and to predict our behaviors, Gen AI consumes a wide variety of data. Think about large text documents, video files, images, all the unstructured data, and using that data to kind of generate even more data. And that's one of the reasons why that concerns some of our privacy professionals, because we are worried about unintended consequences of personal data making it way into that data as well as getting exploited through Gen AI. At the same time, we often wonder as consumers of Gen AI, how is the model making the decisions? What is the explainability? What is the logic? What is the transparency behind the model around how the model actually comes to a conclusion and generates certain data? And at the same time, unlike traditional AI, which is one-way communication, just predicting insights, Gen AI behaves like a human. It allows you to interact, ask questions, just like you're talking to a friend. So all of these beautiful aspects that make Gen AI valuable and unique also cause concerns for security, privacy, and compliance issues in all of our minds. And one thing that is super critical to understand as a background for this webinar is data is truly the core of Gen AI. If you think about the model, it's a combination of compute, software, as well as a lot of data compressed as knowledge. A lot of these models that we are using have been trained by scraping different data from the internet sources. Even enterprise data has been trained on enterprise data sets. And no matter what kind of model does your organization pick, even if it's off the shelf, you may still want to tune that model to your corporate data sets for it to perform according to the behavior of your corporate data and relevant to your application use cases. Now, in order to use these models, again, you are interfacing by feeding more data as in the form of questions, and the output is also data. The question is really all of the data that surrounds the model. Does it contain sensitive personal data, and how do we safeguard that data? Really is the objective today. And the other aspect that's unique about Gen AI is it's like human mind. Once you feed sensitive data, it's not possible to take that back. The only thing you can do is really hope that somebody or an attacker doesn't get to it and try to extract that information. That's what makes our role as privacy professionals and cybersecurity professionals even more important when using Gen AI. So for this particular conversation, we all understand that our goal is to figure out what is the best way to safely use this technology. And we have learned our lessons from the past. We have tried to stop our employees from using smartphones and iPhones at work, or stop them from using cloud. And we understand that these disruptive technologies, because of the value they bring, they make their way through our organization. The only possible way is to train our employees, train our organization, build guardrails to help them safely use GenAI. So when it comes to AI governance, there are really four key areas that we want to focus on today. The first area is going to be around the safety of the model, understanding what models is my organization using, understanding the limitations of those models so that we can proactively manage that risk. The second is building governance around the data, understanding the inventory of the data, context of the data, and building controls so that we can safeguard the data that is being used alongside this application as well as generated as a part of GenAI. Third, providing our employees, contractors, vendors, customers a safe interface to interact with these models so that they don't have to worry about accidentally feeding something they should not be doing that, right? Almost all of that can be automated and building prompt governance around this. And to help us across all of these three areas, we have regulatory support. Truly, this is the hot topic. We have just seen White House come out with the executive order. We're seeing Europe coming up with AI Act, and then other countries coming up with regulation, which are in the process of formulation. Really, the goal of these regulators to help us provide best practices and guardrails so that we can use these three areas around the model, data, and prompts in a safe manner. So this is going to be the foundation of the conversation, and we'll go along these topics asking questions with our panelists. With this background in mind, now I want to invite Victor and Daniel to come on video back again so that we can kick off the conversation. And Victor, I understand that a lot of the kind of concerns I may have shared, these raise many questions within the audience that listening to us. But I'm sure there are certain things that we can carry forward as privacy professionals. There must be some best practices and privacy principles that we have learned over the years that also apply to AI governance. Would love to know your thoughts on that.
Thank you, Nikhil. Yes, I mean, there's certainly a very natural overlap between the principles of privacy and what we mean when we're speaking about the governance of AI. So let's unpack that a little bit. The primary goal of AI governance is to answer the question, is it safe? Is it ethical? Will our use of it be responsible, aligned with our organization's values, and in accordance with applicable law? And of course, that sounds like some of the fundamental principles of privacy, namely, is the processing of personal data lawful, fair, and transparent? Continuing on with other privacy principles and relating those to AI governance, we will want AI to be used for specified legitimate purposes. In privacy language, that's purpose limitation. We'll also want AI to be trained on data sets that are adequate, relevant, and proportionate to the model's purposes. And in terms of privacy principles, that's called data minimization, also accuracy. And we'll want the AI to be secure, right? In privacy terms, that's integrity or confidentiality, right? We want to avoid certain kinds of attacks and misuse, like membership inference, which is the re-identification of the data that we've used for training the model. And other, I think the other privacy principle is probably storage limitation. That also comes into how we train the model. And the very last privacy principle, at least in GDPR terms, is the accountability of the controller, which is, of course, what has brought us all here today. And assuredly, our customers will hold us accountable for how our organizations use AI. Our boards might also hold us accountable individually in our capacities as chief privacy officers or similar privacy professionals. And soon, we can expect that the law will hold us accountable as the data controller in our use of Gen AI as well. The other aspect of your question was about best practices. And here I'll start by saying, I don't know that anyone on the call today would necessarily call themselves an expert in AI. I certainly wouldn't. I am a student and I'm learning. However, as a privacy professional, there are a number of best practices that have been critical in my career that apply naturally to Gen AI. The first is being able to influence other leaders. Right? As privacy professionals, you know you're often not the hands-on keyboard getting things done. You also know that you may not quite have the budget to accomplish everything that you need to for your organization. And so you need to reach out and foster a collaborative environment and support the goals of profit centers and the leaders of profit centers in order to get the resources that you need. So that influencing in looking for influencing of other leaders is going to be continue to be really important. So that's a soft skill. And then on the administrative side, I'd say what we do as privacy professionals is really building risk-based governance practices, practices that are defensible and repeatable, while avoiding unnecessary bureaucracy. And two key examples of that would be leveraging PIAs, privacy impact assessments, or we can leverage those in trying to understand generative AIs. What is the generative AI trying to achieve? And once we know what we're trying to achieve, is the data that we're feeding into the generative AI proportionate and necessary to achieve that purpose? Also, if we take a set of prompts that we expect our employees to put before the generative AI, what are the expected outcomes? Right, that would all be in a PIA. We can also use the PIA to document the security controls, including how prompts and outputs will be logged and reviewed, and also to document precisely who in our organization is accountable for continuously monitoring. That's going to be really important with generative AI because they aren't deterministic. They're continually learning and changing. I would say evolving, but the changes aren't always in a positive direction. So, because the same prompt asked at different times could lead to different outputs, we need to have procedures documented for continuous monitoring. Another example of something that we're already, as privacy professionals, we're already great at is assessing vendors, right? Third-party risk management. So we should be updating our vendor risk assessments to ask if AI is part of a vendor's offering, to ask how that AI was trained, including what the sources were for the training data sets. Because if that data was scraped from the internet, there's a high risk of embedded personal data and bias and discrimination. We could ask vendors if our data will train the AI, because that AI will also be available to their other customers. So maybe we need a contractual clause where the vendor won't use our data to train their AI, except for our use. And we can, of course, ask the vendor about its ability to fulfill privacy rights that we get as the data controller. A third thing that we're great at as privacy professionals that will be relevant is training our employees, right? We'll need to, our organizations will need policies and training to accelerate the education and confidence of our coworkers, right? We need to embrace AI, in particular generative AI, because of the innovation and transformation that it could bring. So we should be helping employees feel confident in how they use it. And fourth, we're great at updating our privacy policies, promoting transparency within the organization. That's going to be critical. And my last point on this question is we're great at coming up with procedures that empower data subjects to stay in control of their personal data. And that will be certainly that will be challenging with generative AI. But we'll want to be able to, for example, if an individual objects to having their personal data processed by generative AI, we need to guarantee that they'll have the same rights and benefits and opportunities when their data is processed manually. So that's a simple example, right? Guaranteeing non-discrimination if they exercise their privacy rights. All things, so while that's all to highlight how, while none of us feel like we're experts, a lot of the things that have made up the bulk of our work as privacy professionals are directly applicable and relevant to the type of work we'll need to do to get our organizations ready to embrace generative AI.
Thank you, Victor. And I mean, that's certainly a very comprehensive list. And the emotion it evokes in all of our minds is like, it makes us comfortable, right? Yes, this is a new thing, but there's so many things that we already know that we can apply to this technology, and we just need to change our mindset. Thanks for sort of setting that context. Now, with this next portion, I want to kind of pivot the conversation towards the model. And before we kind of move towards Daniel, I want to understand and engage a little bit of audience. So, Marjorie, if you want to bring the poll forward, we would love to know how many different Gen AI models is your organization using. This will really help us understand kind of the maturity. And Daniel, while we are waiting for the responses to populate, I would love to know what kind of maturity of Gen AI, adoption of Gen AI you're seeing across your client base.
Sure, that's a great question, Nikhil. I think the best way to frame it is it's rapidly evolving, right? So we joke if we talk to clients 8, 9, 10 months ago, generally you could kind of physically point to the folks within your environment that work in generative AI. They sit on this floor, they sit in that corner. You could kind of wrap your arms around it. And what we've really seen the last 6 months, 7 months is this explosion of a democratization of the technology, right? So folks that are very non-technical, doing stuff on the weekends, that they're coming into the office on Monday and saying, hey, I experimented with this on my home laptop, and I like to figure out how I can amplify a business process that we have. So this explosion of consumption of it through both kind of traditional UIs, through widgets people are adding to their browser, through full engineering models, depending on the organization, it's really kind of gone very dramatic. And so from a volume perspective, right, the majority of my large Fortune 500 clients are definitely all in this green box, more than 10. I would say that as we talk to a lot of our partners and leaders in these organizations, they're very hard to kind of answer this question, right? So curious to see what the poll results are, but by and large, I think there's a lot more going on than kind of meets people's mind. As we start looking into it, the numbers tend to be pretty high for a scaled org, but at the same time, it's very hard for most of our clients to pinpoint that at this point.
No, certainly, and I mean the numbers are in line with Daniel, as you were kind of saying. So just for the audience and for everybody's context, we have 21% of the audience at the early stage thinking about Gen AI but not using Gen AI. 35% of the organizations using 1 to 10 different models, 6% using more than 10, and 38% are not fully aware of how many their organization is using. So does this surprise you? It seems it's aligned with how you're seeing it across the organization.
Yeah, no, not surprising. I think the majority of clients have a hard time putting a specific number to it. I would say that as we do some inspection and detection at different clients, a number of our clients that would have put themselves in the 0 category very often have a significant number. And I think that's just part of the learning curve that's going on as well. So, I think maybe the question, sanctioned uses of models, maybe 0, practical uses of models, generally a larger number. But I think that this aligns with what we're seeing out in the world today.
Exactly. And there's always that aspect of shadow IT and shadow usage, right? So that kind of brings me to my next question, Daniel. So I can imagine knowing across the organization which models are being used is important. Can you kind of share your